Right. Good morning, everyone. Very pleased to be here. We're at a very exciting time on CRC. Not so exciting, perhaps, for you if you're having to try and work out what's happening, because we are conscious we are changing quite a lot. That's what I'm aiming to cover this morning. I've got quite a number of slides, which I'll go through at a lick to keep to time. I assume these will be on the website, the conference website afterwards, so you can enjoy them at your leisure. First of all, I have to state the obvious. Why are we doing this? Climate change is happening. We need to become more energy efficient. CRC is designed to help us address that. The thing you need to be aware of is that under this administration, we're very focused on carbon budgets. Previous administration put in legislation that there are fixed carbon budgets the government has to stick to, and this is informing virtually every decision in government. The carbon consequences of every decision have to be examined very closely. You have David Kennedy speaking to you later in the afternoon from the Climate Change Committee, who will be able to give you much more detail as to why they have recommended what they have for the fourth carbon budget, which is the thing that is devoting a lot of time at the moment in Whitehall. The government has to announce by June under the legislation what its budget is for the fourth carbon budget, which is 2023 to 27, and then in October it will set out its plans as to how it's going to meet that carbon budget. Key thing underpinning the carbon reduction commitment is the fact that the evidence shows there's an awful lot of cost-effective abatement, is the jargon for CRC participants to save energy. This is the Carbon Trust figure work on this slide. They reckon it's about £4 billion worth of savings can be made by participants in investing in energy efficiency measures which pay for themselves, hence the cost effective. These are the figures from the Climate Change Committee report on the fourth carbon budget period as to what they think energy efficiency should be delivering to help us meet our carbon budgets. So why do we need a CRC energy efficiency scheme? The key thing is that the evidence shows that there are a lot of organisations, possibly many of you in this room, who aren't implementing measures which would drive the take-up or drive energy efficiency, reduce your energy bills. Now, why is this? There's a range of barriers to you taking this up. For most of the private sector, it's just not high enough up your order of priorities. There are similar issues in the public sector, and access to finance is an issue for both sectors. Just a quick advertisement. The Green Deal, the legislation is currently going through the Houses of Parliament. I think it's just finished in the House of Lords. We'll go to the Commons shortly. Will apply or be available to both private individuals and to business and the public sector as an opportunity to get greater access to finance, which will pay for itself. And the liabilities, the debts, will be attached to the meter, is the idea, rather than the householder in the domestic sense. There's still quite a bit of work to be done as to how to make sure this works properly for the private sector, but we are looking at that, and we'll be making further announcements in due course. So this may be another avenue you want to explore in due course to find ways to raise finance to pay for energy efficiency measures. I think that's an understatement. Simplification is needed. The CRC is a simple and straightforward scheme when you compare it to something like the EU emissions trading system, but that's not much consolation for you who find out it is a very complex scheme. I think one of the key issues for us is that it has been designed in many instances, and we recognise this, for the benefit of the regulator rather than the regulated. The amount of steps organisations had to go through, or some organisations had to go through for very good reasons, to prove they weren't caught by the scheme was, in hindsight, ridiculous, I think is the only way I could describe it. We should move to a system whereby we have you decide whether you're eligible or not, and then it's for the regulator to decide whether you've made the right judgment, rather than you having to prove in advance. That's why we've removed the concept of information declarers from the scheme. We had the consultation before Christmas. The legislation is being laid in Parliament at the moment, so from the 1st of April, there will be no requirement for information declarers for the next phase. Not much consolation for people who've had to go through it now, but we won't put you through that. That's just a kind of token of what our intent of the things we want to simplify. So far, where have we got to on CRC? We've had registration. We expected somewhere around about 3,000 organisations, between 3,000 and 5,000. That's actually happened. What has transpired is there have been fewer actually groups of organisations registering. So it's only just under 3,000, but that's covered 5,000 organisations when you take account of subsidiaries and so on. So the Environment Agency's estimates were pretty accurate. The Environment Agency is helping those who haven't registered, who the agency thinks it should be registered, going through the process of registering. There are one or two cases where the agency is pretty focused that the individual organisations are now deliberately avoiding registration, and they will soon face court action. You, of course, as the organisations who have registered, are in the process of taking forward your data collection in order that you can submit the returns by July. I've already referred to the fact that we had the consultation in November. The legislation has now, as I say, been laid in Parliament. Kristen has already referred to the fact we've simplified it by ending the concept of revenue recycling. Ministers and myself have been very clear that the reason for doing this was the need to fund the deficit. We were after the money. It was a very conscious DEC Treasury decision. We don't hide behind Treasury. Ministers very consciously took the decision that the money was needed. It does have the secondary benefit of giving you a very clear price signal, which a lot of people were complaining about, but that is very much a secondary reason for the decision. Information declarers has, as I've already said, been scrapped, and we've delayed the start of the second phase. So how do we simplify? We've published on our website, which many of you I hope will have seen and hopefully commented on, a range of issues where we think simplification are the obvious areas for simplification, but essentially we're open to any suggestions. There is nothing off the table. One of the issues which we're very conscious of is the overlaps between schemes, particularly for heavy industry. One of the tensions in CRC is the balance between fairness and simplicity. I think it's fair to say that up till now we've gone overboard on the fairness, not the simplicity. So, for example, heavy industry who have climate change agreements with the government to get reduced rates of climate change levy can be exempted from the scheme for that part of their organisation, which is covered by the climate change agreement. Trying to balance fairness between companies who have a wide range of processes, businesses in their organisation has led to a lot of complex rules. One of the issues we could do is remove organisations completely who have a climate change agreement from the scheme. But then there might be competition issues for some operating in the same market who doesn't have a climate change agreement. Organisational structure is another issue, particularly for businesses, less so I think in the public sector, that there are very complex rules designed to make sure the whole of an organisation is captured. We think there is great scope for simplification here. The question for us then is, in simplifying, do we lose a lot of coverage? Are there unfair competition issues? And what's the balance between fairness and simplicity? I think we will err on the side of simplicity. I think that's where ministers want to go, but that does run the risk of unfair treatment between people competing in the same market. Allowance sales is an issue, particularly now you have no prospect of getting any money back. We've already delayed the first sale. We were quite surprised just how poorly people were being able to calculate how much energy their organisations used. The Environment Agency is still going through the process of trying to help people accurately determine whether it's kilowatt hours or megawatt hours. There was one public sector body which I better not mention, registered greater electricity consumption than Tata Steel, which we didn't think was quite true. Obviously an error. And it just goes to show that it's not easy for a lot of organisations to get a grip on their energy use, which shows the need for CRC, but we didn't want to get people having to wrestle with allowance sales, the concept of trading, when they're still getting to grips with the basics. So what are some options for the future? The Climate Change Committee have already suggested that we don't have a cap and have auctions and a whole new process that people have to try and understand as well as managing energy. There's an issue about whether you continue with what we're proposing for the first phase, where you just effectively have a tax. You buy allowances for the amount of energy you use each year at the end of the year. We see significant benefit in making people forecast energy use and give them the option of buying allowances at the start of a year. It helps people, it rewards those who manage their energy efficiently and put effort into that. The issue for us will be, or the issue ministers will eventually decide on, is that proportionate? Are the benefits from encouraging you to make a use of trading worth the aggravation? There are a range of other issues which we could cover. These are ones which have typically been raised in the past. We're aware that we've had 3 rounds of consultation on CRC already. We don't anticipate many new areas coming up, but we want to give everyone the chance to feed back to us in the light of experience of registration and now preparing for this scheme. The league table is something that still provokes a lot of confusion, and I think that's our fault for not having explained how it works clearly, not giving you examples of how it will work. The whole basis of CRC is the reputational drivers will change behaviour. If it was just about cost, you'd be doing it already. So there are behavioural issues, there are structural issues in terms of landlord-tenant, how companies are organised, how you have to apply for the finance. We're very keen, therefore, to make sure that at board level, senior management level, there's good visibility of this issue. So the reputational driver of the league table, we know, is an issue that concerns a lot of companies. It's probably in the last round of consultation the thing that companies, chief executives, chairmen raised most with our ministers. So we know it is a driver. DEC's own experience shows that reputational drivers are a big change of behaviour. We've saved 30% in our energy use over 1 year. That's nothing to do with the cost savings. That's entirely to do when the department was set up. We're in a pretty poor building for the bottom of the scale. The then Secretary of State made quite clear he didn't want to be the minister responsible for energy, climate change and energy efficiency and be giving a very poor example. We've managed through very simple measures, not very expensive, changing settings on heating, hot water, installing a new chiller unit for our IT to make significant savings. And this is the thing that I hope that many of you already realise, but quite a lot of organisations don't. It's not necessarily large-scale investment that is needed. A lot of it is behaviour change from staff, changing some settings, making sure your energy efficiency programme is properly managed and that your energy use in the organisation is efficiently managed, and you can get quite quick wins. You may not be able to see this at the back, so you may want to look at this later. This is a mock-up of what we think the league table will look like. A lot of information in there. We've had requests quite a lot in the past for having sectoral league tables. We're not trying, particularly now that revenue recycling is no longer happening, and so the financial aspects of the league table are no longer significant in terms of what you get back. We're keen to make sure that as much data as possible is published, and it's then for others to analyse it and comment on it, draw up sectoral league tables. So the important thing is getting the information out there on which independent third parties can make judgments about how good energy efficiency and energy management is in individual organisations and groups of organisations. So while the website, the Environment Agency website will have a league table such as this on it, you will be able to click on individual participants and get a lot more detail. Now, the actual detail we can publish has still to be finalised, not least because of commercial sensitivities. There are issues about some private companies who don't have their annual turnover published. We don't want to perhaps be the ones publishing their turnover for the first time. So we have to work out quite what we can publish. One of the ideas we've also had, which we welcome ideas on, is the extent to which we have a free text box, which you can explain in it what the company's done, what the organisation's done. You may have made some disposals, made some acquisitions, bought some new properties, which have impacted your performance. relative to the previous year. This would be an opportunity when you submit your data return to get that explanation in, so that anyone who's looking at your data can see it in context. Under the previous administration, ministers gave a commitment that there would be information on renewables published. Obviously, investment in renewables doesn't win brownie points on the CRC because it's about energy efficiency. We're not so concerned about where the energy comes from, it's the fact that you use less of it. So you don't get ranking in the league table on the basis of your renewables investment. However, we recognize that a lot of companies in having a carbon strategy want to do that, and we encourage them to do that through other subsidies in the system, not through the CRC, but we think it's right that people get the opportunity to publish that information should they wish. So what do we need from you? We've asked initially for comments on our discussion papers and other issues by last Friday. There is still time to give us more. In particular, in giving us ideas, we know a lot of the problems with CRC. What we're now in the business of is wanting solutions. So the solutions that you suggest to us, we want you to explain how you think it will deal with the four main barriers to investment in energy efficiency set out there, and how that would work in your organisation, in your sector, and the kind of magnitude of saving that could have. So the 11th of March has already passed, obviously. We will continue this dialogue going forward. Ministers are very keen that we don't rush out with hard, formal written consultations with draft statutory instruments and so on, and that we continue a discussion with those involved so that we get the right and the best solutions. The idea is that I'd hope by the summer, we'll be able to announce our more focused direction of travel of where we're heading, and in the autumn, towards the end of the year, publish the draft legislation for formal consultation, which would then set out what we're doing when and the simplification solutions that we had decided were the best. And then it's at that stage you can give us a lot more focused discussion. We will probably continue speaking to people in groups and sectors throughout April. We will not be on public platforms like this, I'm afraid, because of the local election and devolved administration elections, which curtail the amount of publicity we can do, because we're not allowed as civil servants to start election issues and electioneering on behalf of ministers. So we may continue private conversations, but you will see few of us at conferences. In May, we can restart that process. And I should point out that given this scheme is UK-wide, we'll be agreeing with the devolved administrations the way forward once they've got administrations after the elections, because they're just on the point of disappearing. That's enough from me for the moment. I'll be happy to take questions later. Thank you.